So is this budget really transformational? I put that question to Finance Minister Grant Robertson just before we came to air.
Absolutely. I mean, just take mental health, for example. We are finally taking mental health seriously. We're talking about a situation now where people can show up to their GP's clinic or to a student health centre and know that they'll be able to see somebody who's got expertise in mental health, that we're finally taking suicide prevention seriously. We're getting on top of homelessness and we're transforming children's lives. You know, we are really making a difference in this budget. There's always more to do, but I think the way that we've put this budget together is genuinely different. Long-term challenges that face New Zealand will take time to fix them, but we're making a really good start.
Okay, well, let's look at the specifics. So $1.9 billion on mental health services. Nobody is denying that that is a big chunk of change. It will give access, by your calculations, to about 325,000 people will get access to services at its peak. But we did a rough calculation. That's about 6% of the population. And your own mental health inquiry suggested access for 20% would be a good target to work towards. So how much more can we expect?
As I say, this is the beginning. We know that there's more to do. One of the big issues we've got is we simply don't have the workforce. So we actually have to train that workforce up. What we're saying is if you show up, you'll get the support and help you want. The estimates are, as we build it up, that it will be around 320,000 people. But I do hasten to add the $1.9 billion is significantly more than just that new frontline service. It's also about addiction and making sure that we get on top of that and providing the services we need there, suicide prevention services, addressing homelessness, addressing mental health and addiction issues in our prison system. So it's a holistic process. It's not just about one intervention, but we believe that primary one will make a difference.
And I understand, so it's about totality of access, but would you still accept you're well short of where you need to be with that?
Oh, we've got to build it up, and I certainly would accept that. But we know with the combination of different programs we're doing, we know we're in schools where we're providing more nurses in schools and getting in ahead of the problems that might have evolved there. We've got another decile of schools coming into that system. We've got the Mana Ake program in Christchurch. So look, you know, mental health has not been taken seriously in New Zealand for a very, very long time, and we have got a series of initiatives here that will make a really good start on fixing those problems.
Let's go to welfare now. Tagging benefit increases to wage increases. Around how much extra will that put in a beneficiary's pocket each week?
So in 2023, we estimate that it'll be about $17 a week more than the CPI increase. So bear in mind that there's always been the increase at the rate of inflation. That is going to make a difference. That'll put meat in the groceries for some low-income New Zealanders that they haven't been able to do before. But actually, it's another example of trying to take a more long-term approach. The last government did a one-off $25 a week increase because things had built up to be so bad. What indexation does mean is that actually those benefit rates increase for some of our lowest income people. And it was actually on Radio New Zealand, I believe, in 2017 that Andrew Beecroft, the Children's Commissioner, said that indexing benefits was the best thing a government could do to reduce child poverty, and that's what we've done today.
No, to be specific, Minister, also what he said is that you need to index the baseline benefit to wages in the same way super is. So super is 66% roundabout of the average wage, and that's also what he wants. So you've only gone part of the way, haven't you?
Yeah, but I think it's a very significant step forward, and I think the feedback I'm getting from the sector is that they believe that this is transformational, to use your words. Always more to do, and you know, we also have acknowledged that we've got the second phase of the Welfare Expert Advisory Group recommendations to work through now. Minister Cipollone is doing that work, and we know this job is nowhere near done, but I think today we can look at a budget that will transform the lives of some low-income New Zealanders.
Well, some of the people we have spoken to who work in this area say it's tokenism on your part and doesn't go anywhere near the up to 47% increase in benefits that your own Welfare Advisory Group recommended.
Yeah, and as I say, that work at looking at those rates is in the second phase of our response to the Welfare Expert Advisory Group. We've always said you can't do every single thing in one budget. We've made 3 significant advances on the recommendations in this budget. We've got rid of the punitive sanction on women who don't name the partners of the fathers of their children. We're making sure that the abatement rate for beneficiaries who go into work is linked to minimum wage increases, and now we've got this indexation. I think those are really really important steps forward, and now we work on phase 2 of the group's recommendations.
Do you think you've paid your dues to the Greens, who are owed a overhaul of the welfare system as part of their confidence agreement with you? Have you met that?
I'm sure you can do an interview with the Greens and find out what their reaction is.
I'm wondering what you think, Minister.
Well, I think we've done a really good important job here and made some really important first steps, and as we have across a number of areas, and we build these things up over time. This is the second of 3 budgets in this term, and I believe it will transform the lives of many New Zealanders.
Okay, so what percentage of your budget spend went on meeting coalition or confidence and supply promises made to your parties?
I actually don't have that percentage, Lisa, because we actually looked at this budget in exactly the way I described it earlier today, that we got evidence-based priorities. We looked at what New Zealanders valued and how we could deliver on those. The good news is the coalition agreement and the confidence and supply agreement back up many of those issues. And, take something like rail, for example, clearly an issue for New Zealand First, but also the Greens have been huge advocates of that, as have Labour. And now we're going to have $1 billion going into improving our rail systems over the next 2 years.
In one of your pre-budget speeches, you got your ministers to whip around and find out what their lowest priority spend was. 1%, I think it was. You found $1 billion down the back of the couch. Some of that was from unspent budget on the tertiary fees. Where did the rest come from? Specifically, what has been ditched to make up that $1 billion?
Look, it's all in the budget documentation.
Yeah, but give us a quick overview.
Well, it's a range of things. There's some others in education. For example, some of the previous programs the government's run what their so-called Investing in Educational Success program. There's money there that's no longer needed. It's really made up of a lot of reasonably...
And what from your other ministries?
And there's a lot of reasonably small funds. A very small example is there's some funding from a cultural diplomacy program that I'm responsible for that it actually hasn't been that well spent over the last few years, so we decided that could be reallocated. It really is a range of things like that, as you say, a mixture of money that just hasn't been spent and some programs that we no longer think are a priority.
I want to just talk about the politics leading up to your budget today. What conversations have you had with Treasury Secretary Gabriel McLouth in relation to the hack/leak, call it what we will?
Look, I think Mr McLouth left me to focus on the budget today, which is exactly what I think most New Zealanders would want me to do, is focus on delivering this budget.
We've had a good crack at that, Minister. There's still some unanswered questions here, so I'd appreciate it if you could help us out here. Do you think that the Treasury Secretary mishandled this whole situation?
Well, I've already said today that I'm very disappointed that the Treasury system was able to be accessed this way, and I'm also disappointed that the Treasury didn't do more to find out what had happened before they referred this to the police. This is now the subject of the State Services Commissioner inquiring into what happened here, and that for me is the next focus in that regard.
Do you expect him to resign or leave ahead of his scheduled departure date?
I don't know about that. His employment relationship is with the State Services Commissioner, not with me, so those matters are better directed there.
Do you owe the National Party an apology, Minister?
I don't believe so. I mean, I think I'd invite listeners and you to put yourself in my shoes. On Tuesday night, the Chief Executive of the Treasury came to my office and said that he had already referred to the police 2,000 attempts to infiltrate the Treasury system. I asked him if he knew how that had happened. He said he didn't know at that stage. I asked him the extent of it. Had other documents been compromised? He said he didn't know, although the system had been, the area of the system that had been infiltrated involved the budget documents. I have to take that seriously, and I have to make sure that I act on that.
Yeah, and I'm sorry to interrupt you, but what you did was you went a step further. I've looked closely at his statement and your statement. You made the link between the so-called hack and the documents that the National Party had. So did you misstep in making that link, or did Gabriel McLouth make that link to you at some point in private?
I don't believe I did misstep. What I did in that statement was...
So did he give you wrong information?
Well, I think that's now what the inquiry will look at. But clearly we now know what has happened here.
So if he gave you wrong
Lisa, do you want me to answer?
No, you have answered the bit that I was wanting. So
okay.
If he did give you wrong information, Minister, and then you went out in public and made a statement which was not entirely correct, what responsibility should he take for that?
Well, that's the issue for Mr McLouth and indeed for his employer, the State Services Commissioner.
But does the buck stop with him on this?
well, that's a matter for him and for Mr Hughes.
And that's Finance Minister Grant Robertson.